Inequality in India rests on both, well, maybe more than two, but certainly on the caste system, which takes a whole program to talk about, but also, and on the persistence of caste, this caste system, even when it's not so much talked about. And the rural-urban divide. In the recent decade or so, the number of rural people who now have cell phones and access to internet and so on, and also see things on television, they aspire to an urban life. And so they move into the cities. So the urban areas are pulling way ahead on many social indicators, whereas the rural areas aren't. And Marshall Bhutan, whom I talked about, has written a very erudite, wonky paper on what's happening, and it's the lack of some policies, welfare policies that aren't working, distribution of food is not always working, and there's a lot of corruption in India, everyone knows that. Their GDP, you asked about the gross domestic product, has been falling. I just read yesterday or today that it could go below 6% a year this year. It was at its height more than 11%. And it has gone steadily down in the last few years. So the GDP is something to worry about, except for Indians, they see these things happening, this idea of a recession all over the world. Manufacturing is down. Manufacturing is down here in the United States. So there's a lot, there are what academics like to call the external and internal factors, or the domestic factors, but the external factors are not good. We're caught up now in an international global war with tariffs and sanctions and so on, and so India, in many ways, some of these things affect in India's decisions also, and so it's not entirely an Indian problem. I don't want to fall into stereotypes because, in other words, then everybody says India is a bunch of poor people groveling around. But there are people actually who are so poor that they eat the rice out of a rat's body. And that's not a fairy tale, that's a true story. I've talked to some of these tribes. The Dalits now, which is the former outcast people, are getting better educated. They're getting opportunities to work. I've interviewed them in Silicon Valley, and they are very much pushing for more equality. In fact, Dalit organizations in the United States, among them, those who have left India and are trying to find a life here, that they feel that the caste system follows them around. But also, they want to see the civil rights movement in this country take up their cause, because they feel that they, despite all of the efforts of various important people in India to create a more equal society and work on it, the Dalits still feel that they are not treated equally. Now, at the local level, I talked about the rural-urban divide. At the local level, some of them live in the most extraordinary privation with very little to eat, no electricity, no running water, no sanitation. Sanitation is one of the things that Modi has been focused on, quite rightly, because a huge percentage of Indians have absolutely no access even to a latrine. So that's the level at which they live. But while they live at this level, I found from around election time and things, they are absolutely fearless in talking to an outsider. They have to be careful talking to an upper caste Indian sometimes. But they say, put down my name. This is what I think of the government. And so there's the Dalit organizations now are playing on this. So it's a very interesting time that these former outcasts who are getting better educated, who are traveling abroad, who are getting jobs overseas, are finding also that they need to have a civil rights movement, because that's the only thing that's going to change, because their constitution gave everybody equality, but it hasn't worked out. The Dalit can live in fear of the Brahmin caste, Dalits have been killed trying to get into Brahmin temples. Dalits have been killed trying to marry up into the regular the caste system, and vice versa. So there is and then as I say, along with Muslims, they can be lynched. This is in recent terms. It's the kind of word that most American media never wants to use for any other situation apart from the American slavery period and after. But it's showing up, and Indian commentators are writing wonderful things about this.